It's time for Measure Twice.
Welcome to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, there's doors, there's cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger right next to C. Kramer Interiors. I was going a little too fast, and I haven't even had the whole cup of coffee yet, Joel. And we're brought to you by Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You could visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. If you're driving in your car or wherever you are, you've sensed it. There's an extra presence in the studio. You've felt it.
That's right.
And it's pretty magnanimous. It's one of our best guests ever. I'm not going to lie.
Definitely elevates us.
Yes, we're definitely better than we were 18 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. The pressure is mounting.
Oh, you heard the voice. That is the velvety tone of Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director, Ruthmere Foundation. Thanks so much for being with us today, our special guest.
You're welcome. It's my honor to be here. It's great.
Yeah, you found the place okay? Was that all right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's right in the heart of Michiana.
It's just that being the director of such a historic foundation, we assumed you drove a horse and buggy here.
Well, or I thought you were going to say you Elkhart folk. You get confused when you cross that county line, don't you?
All people are our people. We are open and welcome.
As are we.
Thanks so much for being here. You do a very important job in our community. And there's a lot to unpack, but if you're not familiar with the Ruthmere Museum in Elkhart, it's cool. Mm-hmm. It's cool. It is really this area we always talk about this area has a lot of places where you can walk through the door and walk back into a different area. You can, if you want to leave the everyday grind, that we have those places, and Ruthmere is definitely one of those.
How soon can you start working in my marketing department? Thank you for that. That's a goal of ours. We try to be, a high point, a place that people want to come to, not just learn about the past and soak all that up, but kind of escape from the daily grind a little bit and grab a little culture along the way. And I was just mentioning to Joel when I arrived that we just started the first in our spring concert series last night, and so we're off and running on that right now. And so we offer a really wide variety of different programs, but people most often think of us for our guided tours of our two historic homes.
So let's unpack that a little bit. When we say the Ruthmere Museum, what is that? I know this is a broad question. We'll start with the umbrella, and we'll start at 50,000 feet and then work down.
So built around the facilities first, right? We are a 2 historic house museum campus, and about to have a 3rd historic structure that's soon going to be opening this fall, the Beardsley Discovery Center. That will be the new point of entry for all of our tours to go to either Havilah Beardsley House or Ruthmere Mansion. The way I like to say it to people, and the Discovery Center is in itself a historic building. It is the historic carriage house and stables of the Havilah Beardsley House. But it didn't come with the Havilah Beardsley House in its evolution of ownership to Ruthmere Foundation that just recently came into our hands. And so for the last 50-plus years, we've been giving guided tours of Ruthmere Mansion. For the last 10 years, add to that, we've been giving guided tours of the Havilah Beardsley House. And now with the opening of the Beardsley Discovery Center, which will be a free facility for people to come and explore the topic of history, historic preservation, and family genealogy, we're going to be offering free family genealogy research services at the Discovery Center for the public. So those are some of the main everyday things. And then layer on top of that about 85 special programs a year that we offer outside of our our basic daily program.
Wow. So we're talking with Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director at Ruthmere Foundation. Thanks so much for being here. That's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So let's start first with, how the heck do you, I mean, believe it or not, there's probably people that are like, what's this? I've never heard of this thing. How do you get there? Where is this place?
Sure. The campus address, we still use Ruthmere Mansion because it's the most identifiable of all the facilities. And that's 302 East Beardsley Avenue, which right across the river and very near, just a couple blocks east of the Main Street Bridge. And at the Main Street Bridge, Beardsley intersection, is the Havila Beardsley House. So our two house museums are just 2 blocks apart from each other.
Is that whole neighborhood
Yes, it's a Beardsley Historic District neighborhood. That's correct.
What does that mean?
National level significance. What's that?
What does that mean, though? Like if you were to buy a house in that district, what does that mean for you?
Well, I think it means to most.
Means you pay more.
The voice of
Joel's here.
Yeah, Joel.
That's nice. I had forgotten you were here. Joel invited me here today, so that's anyway. The what it means, I think, is a certain sense of responsibility to the past. That if you're going to be a homeowner in the district, you need to maintain the integrity of the historical context. There are certain regulations you need to try to abide by in terms of what you can do and what you can't do, or who you have to ask for permission if you want to do something. There are some watchdog groups. I know that you often have on this program Indiana Landmarks.
Yeah, we have Todd on here all the time.
And Todd, full disclosure, Todd is on my board of directors. So my boss,
we won't be bad-mouthing Todd today.
My boss is listening, right?
He knows we think he looks and sounds like Kevin Spacey. So that's okay.
No.
He knows that. We're open about that on this show.
Never made that connection.
Now you can't. Now you can't.
Now you can't unsee it once you see it.
Yeah, I guess.
He's a handsome guy. I can't,
Todd and I have actually worked together since virtually the beginning of both of our careers. We both started at what is now the South Bend History Museum, Kapsche Oliver Mansion.
Oh. Yeah.
And Todd, when I started working there as an assistant curator, Todd was already there 1 year ahead of me as, horticultural landscape manager, facilities manager type role. I forget his exact title.
He's a really passionate guy about this stuff in a good way. And he's also real, if I can just coin a new term, he's like realistically passionate about it. Like he's very he is in the real world. He's not fake. And when you say there's an organization, like there's watchdogs, I will put it this way. We're against HOAs here. We're not for them. But that's the HOA that if you think that HOA is a hassle, that's probably not the house for you.
Right.
Because that's part of the importance.
You know what? I had no idea that was sort of the philosophy in the room. But let me finish. I'm 100% kind of behind that too, because I'm a freedom of choice kind of guy, and so, but Todd and I have always been really, really rooted in practicality, and finding common sense solutions to whatever the challenge is in front of you. If it's a historic property or whatever, I mean, there are certain baseline things that you have to standards that you have to meet, but there are different ways to meet them, and if you can get there in a way that makes more sense and is easier to execute, why wouldn't you go for that route? Right.
So. Now, Chris and Joel are kind of we'll just say they're a little bit of celebrities in the restoration world. Joel's doing work on Havila House, and Chris lives in a historic home in South Bend, like one of the historic homes in Indiana, right? I mean, it's kind of
The oldest private residence in St. Joe County.
Excellent. Yeah. And what's your what do you feel is your role in being the caretaker of it right now?
I'm the caretaker. My role is to preserve it as best I can, and I've actually just gone through replacing 4 windows that were replaced sometime in the 20s that did not match the original windows.
Yeah.
So they're in the process of installing those, so the whole front is now uniform to what it would have been.
Yeah.
It was built in 1832.
And it only took 100 years to make that correction.
That's right. All I was thinking when I did it is like, this is probably the most significant change in 100 years.
Well, when we come back, let's talk about that because things do change. We'll be right back with Bill Furstenberger from Ruthmere Foundation. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I don't know what's going on with the universe, but there's definitely I think it's because we have Bill Furstenberger from the room here. I'm just going to blame our guests.
Blame Bill.
We do guest blaming here. That's what we're known for that. But you're listening to Measure Twice on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential. And we're brought to you part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops with the showroom right now open right next to C. Kramer Interiors in Granger. And Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You could visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. And we're the usual cast of characters in here. We've got Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors with us, Joel Graber from Graber Customer Modeling, and special guest Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director, Ruthmere Foundation. If you want to get involved with Ruthmere Foundation, the first place to start would be ruthmere.org, RUTHMERE.org. That's a lot of letters in a row. Sounded like the alphabet. I screwed it up, but no, that's the website, ruthmere.org. Just like it sounds.
Not as many
really.
letters as Furstenberger. So.
No, you got it. Man, if you played basketball, you'd need 2 jerseys.
Yeah.
You'd have to stack that name.
Heard that before.
That's pretty cool. So Bill, when we were just talking in the last segment about like it took 125 years to restore or to correct Chris's windows on the Assumption House, but when you said you were open for 50 years, that's been going on. Honestly, that doesn't sound like a long time
for the museum. Ruthmere is a lot old. It's been a museum since 1973. So we're now 52 years. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, open to the public as a public house museum, and then a little bit, later in the chain, we opened the Havilah Beardsley House full time in 2015.
Were people living there at Ruthmere when you were like, did it take them a long time to kick them out? Were you just like, were you like doing pacing back and forth on the lawn? It's like, God.
Interesting question. So 3 families lived at Ruthmere over its existence as a residence. The original builders, Albert and Elizabeth Beardsley, they got to live in it from 1910 when it was completed until 1924. They both died the same year, a few months apart from each other. And then Albert's nephew, Arthur Beardsley, and his wife, Stella, lived there until the mid-40s. And then it went out of the Beardsley family possession, and another family that's become very well known regionally, the Deputy family, moved in say around 1945, and they held it longer than any other family, and also were the only family that ever had children running around in Ruthmere. So talk about preservation, restoration. A house getting beat up by 6 boys over 25 years, and the deputies of all the families that lived there, they have the best stories. And we've captured all of those with a lot of interviews over the years, and again preserving the oral history of how the house was used. And then they saw some of the things that were happening in that historic district and area of Elkhart, and some historic houses that were getting taken down. And our founding director, Robert Beardsley, came to the Deputy family after they were virtually empty nesters. Not quite. There was still, the last son was still living in the house, but with an offer to, hey, do you really want to help us preserve this legacy building for Elkhart? Then we would like to, at that time called the Beardsley Foundation, would like to purchase it from you and restore it and turn it into a museum. And that suited the deputies just fine. And the Deputy family continues to serve on our board of directors.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say restored, so somebody's in this house living there, empty nesters, or one son, but I'm assuming they were like a more grown up son. It wasn't like a teenager, probably.
He's going to love it that I mentioned his name. Peter, I know you're listening. Peter Deputy. He was the last of the Deputy boys, and he bears the scars to this day that he did not get to hold his senior after prom party at Ruthmere because the family had already moved out. And
so he was young. He was a teen.
He was a teenager, and all of his older brothers got to have their after prom party, but Peter didn't, and he never lets anybody forget it.
Well, we probably need to have a prom there then as an event.
Well, we've done some like proms for kids that sometimes don't get to go to traditional prom things, and in certain settings for certain populations of our teenagers and in the community, and we've done that. And that's a cool thing.
So we're talking with Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director of Ruthmere Foundation, ruthmere.org if you want to get involved. But somebody was living there, and you said, and then restore it. And in my mind, if somebody's living there, are you undoing some things that are were modern or
so
something
like any house, and Chris can really, and Joel both, but Chris as the homeowner can really relate to this, that if you go into a situation that, say, it's been a lived-in residence over many, many years, there's just a natural evolution that happens as technology changes, as materials change, people wanting to stay up with the times. They do things. They do things to the house, and sometimes it's from a historic preservation standpoint, they do the wrong things,
right?
That you have to then undo. Now, I would say in Ruthmere's circumstance, it was never very severe. It was largely cosmetic, but there were a few things that needed to go back and get recaptured. There were also some things like there were originally wall silks on the walls, and those had deteriorated to such a point that by the time the deputies took the house over, they had some real challenges how they were going to try to maintain that. So they kept fragments that were in good shape and stored them for 20, 25 years.
Wow.
Okay. But then they just maybe painted the walls or repaired the walls. But those pieces were all there for our founding director, Robert Beardsley, and his father, Walter Beardsley, who was really the financier behind the restoration of Ruthmere, to then go back and make it right. And that's so rare that you have those legacy owners hold those pieces of history back. So the deputies were fabulous stewards of the...
Yeah, they were ahead of their time.
Way ahead.
As far as historic preservation is concerned, most people would have taken it down and thrown it away.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's just one example, but there are always changes that are happening in these homes. And, when you have a really old home it's got so much character to it, and if you feel like the Deputy family did, or like we do now as we're the current stewards, and we hope forever stewards of our properties, that you do feel a sense of responsibility to it. I guess everybody looks at things differently. Some folks will buy a historic property and then think about how they can make it their own and make these fabulous changes to it. But that kind of goes in the face of historic preservation movement.
So when you're saying when restoring, you're
Yeah.
calling. How do you figure out what to do? I was looking at Chris and Joel, like, because Joel, you're firsthand on, you're doing essentially 2 restoration projects right now. When I know, like, your eye, when you look at a restoration project and you're given a directive, what is it that you're looking at when you go into a historic home? What is your first main objective? Like, a doctor's like, our first objective is do no harm, whatever. What's like your Hippocratic?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like a broken arm sometimes, like you're trying to get it back to what it was. So you're doing some research, in the case of the Havala project, we're able to work with good people who know the history of it and have the resources and the understanding of what it was. That makes it so much easier to get it back to what it was.
Right. We always talk about a plan here, and it's like, I'm
Right.
hearing it. We're getting to everything's a plan.
Yeah.
It's all a plan. What were you going to say? You look like you were going to say something.
No,
Chris.
I was just thinking.
Yeah.
I was just thinking. It's just based on what you were saying about my instance. My house is not necessarily my style. It's a farmhouse. It's simple on the inside. It's not meant to have elaborate carvings and detail, but part of me wants to add some moldings and things but I have to pull back and say, no, that's not what the intention of this house was.
When we come back, let's dive into that, because there is that fine line if you're going to live in the place,
Right.
But if you're a museum, you don't have to think about that. But let's talk about some projects you've got going on, Bill. When we come back, this is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential. And you're listening to us on Machinist News Talk, 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops with the showroom now open in Granger, right next to C. Kramer Interiors. Got through that totally clean, by the way. I'm very impressed with myself. And Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We have a very special guest today, Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director of the Ruthmere Foundation. And if you want to support them, it's ruthmere.org, RUTHMERE.org. I know you're going to, if you're driving right now, you're trying to jot that down. So I'll just say it a lot. By the time you get to your destination, you'll have it down. Bill, thanks so much for being in here. Before we got on the break, Chris, you were talking about like your house, the Sumption house, you had to pull back.
I have to pull back from my personal taste that I would like to, or that I kept thinking I could add to the house. And then I said, no, that's not the intent of the house. It's a farmhouse. It's meant to be simple. It was a functional home. The style does not, I don't want to take it away from what it was intended to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of intentionality built into what you're seeing when you go to your house.
It's really easy to buy something like that and say, oh, I'm going to do this, and this, and make it my own. But there's also the historical integrity that needs to be maintained, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think that it's there's this animal out there in historic preservation called the era of significance for any particular property that you're dealing with, and that's the target goal of what you're trying to accomplish in historic preservation. So, and sometimes it's really challenging. Like if it's a building that's had a super long run in different, it played an important role in different eras of history. Well, then choosing the era of significance for what you want to represent is a big challenge. But once you pin that down, and that's usually kind of somehow embedded in, maybe like for a museum, a house museum, the mission of the museum will often address that or include that, like Havilah Beardsley House. Okay, oldest part of Havilah Beardsley House is 1848. and yet there were all kinds of changes and things that were happening to it. I would say up through the 1920s. We determined that the era of significance that we wanted to represent was 1874 for most of the house, because that was when a huge transformation of the home happened during one of the generations of the Beardsley family that lived there. And we could still tell the oldest part about Havilah, but then his son, who became the second mayor of Elkhart in 1875, did this giant remodel of the house in 1874, in a way to kind of make the old grand Beardsley family home relevant for the local population. I always like to say that was his billboard that he was going to be running for mayor, is make the old house look good again. And he won.
It's a prominent location.
It worked.
Let me just tell you, you can't. The traffic. I'd love to see the traffic study of that intersection where the Havilah Beardsley house is, because it's thousands and thousands of cars.
It is one of the busiest. It is one of the busiest corners in Elkhart County. I keep track of the MACOG numbers on that.
MACOG, yeah.
And the other thing that Chris was mentioning too about like the choices of your colors and stuff like that. I always say that, especially in a museum setting, it's really pretty basic and easy if we do our job right and we do our investigations of what the colors were, what the final finishes were, what the moldings were. We have very few choices to make. It's our job to replicate that era of significance and stop right there.
It's a race to stand still.
You don't get to like the colors, okay? And there are some color schemes in some of the rooms at Havilah Beardsley, like with our eye today, we like, ooh, who did this? Not in an aesthetically good way necessarily, but not my choice. That's
the way it was, right?
That was James Rufus or his wife Susie Ray's choice to make it that way. So,
Bill, there's two main the two buildings are Havilah Beardsley House and Ruthmere Mansion, for lack of. I mean, it's a mansion. It's a beautiful property, but I think one of the cool things about restoration is that you uncover some secrets. So these houses, these homes, these places all have some secrets, some great, crazy secrets, some that are like, wow, there's underbelly and there's magnificent stuff. What can you tell us about, like, what are some of the things that were revealed to the organization as they were restoring Ruthmere and Beardsley?
Some of those, a lot of those secrets were explored, revealed, and have been talked about now for over 50 years by our founding director, Robert Beardsley, who was an architectural preservationist in his own right and had restored a castle in Portugal.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Robert was the real deal, man. And he just died in June 1st of 2021, and he was a great mentor for me as board president, that I got to work with him for many years. But I'd like to reveal one of those secrets that just happened relatively recently. In Ruthmere Mansion, in Albert Beardsley's bedroom, there was this little wall safe that had a combination, dial on it. And not anybody had ever been able to get that thing open.
Ooh.
And there was this mystique and mystery about, and
what could be in there?
What could be in there? He didn't want to bring somebody in who would like drill it out and do it.
Right.
He just let's just leave it a mystery if that's all we ever get out of it. Well, the deputies were going through some old family boxes and found a little scrap of paper with some notes on it. Didn't say this is the wall safe combination, but they saw this piece of paper and it had these numbers and dashes on it, and they gave this over to us to look at. Does this mean anything to you?
Wait, so this safe was like a bedroom safe that you find like behind a picture?
About the size of small little door. I'm holding up like a volleyball size or something like that.
Was it behind a picture or something, or was it just like
it was there for anybody to see? I'm looking at your thermostat on the wall in this room right now, and it kind of looked like one of those old style thermostats.
I just picture there's like a picture of the river, and maybe, it's like on a hinge.
You could have put a picture. You could have hung a picture over it, but instead we didn't. It was always exposed for people to see, and people would often ask about it. And so we would tell the story of the locked safe. Well, we got our grubby little hands on that sheet with those numbers, and our collections manager, Joy Olson, opened the safe in 5 minutes. And therein is the press release that writes itself. And so we send out this press release. Now, shall I tell your listeners what was found or not found in the safe?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, Joel, Chris. Should I keep it more of a secret so people can go there? I mean, certainly he's going to tell us.
I can tell you this much.
Was it significant?
It was significant from a marketing standpoint because our press release was picked up nationally and made news. But you can make of that a lot of different directions. Was there anything of value in there, or wasn't it, or was it just a story?
Well, if you're going to find out, you're going to find out by going to Ruthmere Museum and checking it out. We're not going to do that to you. We're not going to take that.
I hate to tease people. Because I don't want anybody to feel misled.
Okay, you could tell.
How about this? It didn't. There were no family jewels or grand, hoard of cash or gold, but there were some items in there, personal paper items that nobody had ever known about before, and it added to the story of Ruthmere.
And that's really what's important, right? You get these little. It's really a collection of bits and data, just like everything else. There's like little atoms that come together and make up the whole place, and having a safe that you couldn't open for 50 years or whatever. And it was right in front of you.
Half a century.
We don't really know who the last one was, but obviously the deputies had perhaps somehow had this little scrap paper. The paper looks like it's from before the deputy occupation.
Yeah, right.
That it was passed on to them, and then they just didn't know what to do with it. So they put it in a box until 70 years later, they gave it to us.
That's amazing. Well, when we come back, let's talk about how you can help out Ruthmere and maybe talk about Beardsley. Thanks. We'll be right back. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We are brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger, next to C. Kramer Interiors, and that's the C. Kramer Interior Bell, where Bill from Ruthmere's won a $50 cigar. No, I'm just kidding. That would remember You Bet Your Life. At any rate, that was Groucho Marx in the 30s. Wow. And we're brought to you in part by Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. That extra laughter you heard was Bill Furstenberger from Ruthmere Foundation. You're the executive director of the foundation, which I would imagine comes with a lot of worriment on fundraising and making sure that organization goes. One of the things that I think is cool, you'd mentioned, I think off air, that you run, the organization itself runs programs all the time.
Yeah, special programs that we're doing. Well, our daily offerings are guided tours. That's our bread and butter. And as I said, when we open the Discovery Center, we'll add another layer of a daily program, but that's going to be a free program, the genealogy research. But then there's all these other programs. Do
you have to like the daily stuff, do you just show up and somebody's there to take on a tour? Or how does that work?
It's best to check out our website, because we do have scheduled tour times, and we love to have people make reservations for their tours. Obviously, we have tour bus groups right now. We're in the heart of field trip season.
I was just going to say.
And so, yeah, we had a bunch of kiddos there yesterday and this morning again that will be on site. And so it's a busy happening time.
That's a group you're going to need a hook for if you get a bunch of 8th graders walking around in there.
The bulk of our student tours are in that 3rd to 4th grade range. You start to get them a little older than that, and
They start taking stuff. Let's be realistic. There's little kleptos running around in there.
The time schedules. It's really, really hard to corral those kids. I'm getting off on that tangent, but I'm really passionate about field trips because we have one of the most aggressive field trip assistance programs you'll ever find anywhere. Kids from Elkhart County or any county that touches Elkhart County are free to attend Ruth Muir campus tours. They also get a transportation stipend that goes back to their school to help pay for the busing to bring them to
fantastic.
us. And the third thing is the best. Every kid that's 3rd grade or higher up through high school receives a student membership ID card, and they can have free return visits from the day they take their first field trip at Ruth Muir until they graduate high school. And they can use Ruth Muir as a resource for like doing reports, doing all kinds of projects when they get into later grades.
That's fantastic. And you had casually mentioned something on air that just struck me because it's really not connected to what you talked about, but it just dawned on me that you had mentioned that Rockefeller.
That was off air.
That was off air, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that these two homes, the Havilah Beardsley House and Ruth Muir Mansion, that how they have touched the whole country is kind of amazing.
Sure. So off air, we were also talking a little bit about funding. And yes, of course, we do need donor support, and we have a thriving and growing membership support. It's really a affordable thing that people can do. They can look into that if they want. But we're a stable organization, largely because of the forethought of our founding director, Robert Beardsley, his father, Walter Beardsley, who made some investments in art that were then passed to Ruth Muir's collections intentionally with the ability, if the museum ever felt it was a good idea, to sell one of those pieces of art that Walter Beardsley was giving his authorization at the time of donation. Super rare thing to do. And so in 2019, we decided it was one of those times, and we had a much beloved original limestone sculpture by Auguste Rodin, a fellow who did The Thinker that everybody recognizes. And long story short, after a several-month process, it went to public auction at Sotheby's, and it sold for $7.4 million, of which Ruth Muir's portion of the sale was a little over $5.8 million, and that solidified our endowments that now are a major source of our stability, so that we can do those things like those free student field trips. Of course, we have donors that add into that, but when you're contributing and supporting Ruth Muir, you're contributing to something that's a winning organization that's doing a lot, and we're going to be around for a very, very long time.
So what would you say would be the most fun, like if you wanted to dip your toes in the water to hang out at Ruth Muir and get involved with a program or just experience a program?
Come to one of our free programs first. We have a new, not a new series, it's a long-standing series, but it's new to 2025 that's about to launch here in June, Coffee on the Piazza. Every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. to noon, we serve free, tasty coffee from the refinery in Goshen. Good. I'm glad I can say that. And live music. We showcase live music talent of all kinds of different genres. That's every Saturday, June, July, and August, 10 a.m. to noon.
So do you have that stuff posted on the website?
Of course. Yeah.
Ruthmuir.org, RUTHMERE.org.
That's just scratching the surface, but if you start to see that, then you'll see a whole bouquet of different programs and all sorts of different angles and connections, and and we try to find things that really meet our community's needs and interests.
We're here with Bill Furstenberger, Executive Director, Ruth Muir Foundation. One of the things that I noticed, and I'd mentioned when we first got on, it's like, yeah, that's the Havilah Beardsley House, a magnificent house to walk through. Like, it's really magnificent in there. Woodwork, I mean, you name it. But as busy as that street is, when that door closes behind you, it's gone. Like, it's just a peaceful place. And when you walk around Ruthmere, it's still peaceful. Even though that road is super busy, it's almost like it's not there. It's really cool. I get a kick out of there's like an atrium, and or the I don't know the official name. I look at Chris, he tells me there's the atrium. Yeah, there's
there's the conservatory greenhouse, the domed.
I always my job is to mess those words up.
No, that's all right.
It's my role.
Yeah.
So these programs go on. And do you have volunteers, or I'm assuming you rely heavily on volunteers?
We have a legion, ever-growing group of volunteers that can always use more. But I like to say, man, what a great place to volunteer. To be able to share the stories and walk people through our sites. I can't think of a better thing to, or maybe tend our gardens, be involved. There's lots of different ways people can get plugged in to volunteer with us. I think we have a very appealing, offering for volunteers, somebody who wants to contribute to the community.
So when is it done? Like, do you feel like it's always in motion? Like, there's always, even though it's a race to stand still. Right
now, it's difficult for me to see the end of that, just because we have this Beardsley Discovery Center project that we've been working on so long. So I like, that's my thing right now. And what Joel's doing, believe it or not, I mean, he's finishing up the long-awaited historic restoration of the front porch. And I said we opened Havilah Beardsley House 10 years ago. So why didn't you do the porch then, Bill? Well, it just wasn't quite the right time. It also, when we took that house over, that was one of the things that had more recently been done.
Right.
And so what do you want to undo all the work that a previous owner had just put money and resources into? That goes back to that practicality thing that we talked about earlier. And so we decided, let's let this porch live out its days, and when it's time to do the next restoration on it, we'll do it right. And that's why we brought Joel in.
And you chose to go back to the 1874 version?
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks for listening. This has been Measure Twice.
Podcasts by Federated Media.